Hello, everyone. Yeah, today this is day three. We're gonna be focusing on aggregated functions and some key operators. We do have two questions to go through that will be able to showcase, some of these skills. All right. So with that, let's quickly go to use case one. Yeah, right. So we have HR wants a leadership map, CEO to senior design roles, to review reporting structures, succession planning, and headcount allocation across engineering leadership tiers. The focus includes key positions such as Chief Executive Officer and the list all of the different titles. And they have the business impact. And then the task for you is to deliver a deduplicated leadership listing for org mapping. All right. Now, we're going to go back to our guide that we've been using in our previous session, or our formula, I call it, is basically to identify three key things, okay? The table, the filters, and the attributes. We're going to start with the attribute here. We can see we've already identified the attribute that we need to supply, which is the leader ID and the job title. And then the filters, from what we've read so far, we really need to filter for all of these different positions. Okay, that's gonna be what we need to focus on. And in terms of the table, we already know it's related to employees, so employee is going to be our table. Okay, and then the other things we have to take note in this use case is that they want the deduplicated data. All right, so we're going to have to factor that into our work as well. All right, so let's quickly go back to our lab, and I think we have we've worked with employees data before, so I'm just going to copy one of the query, and then we're going to build the solution from there. All right, so let's copy and paste. All right, and then I would uncomment, and then let's just remove all of these guys and just return, put in a wildcard as asterisk, and then we run that. Okay, now we do know what we need, so we're just gonna pull those two attribute, leader ID. All right, and then we're also going to add the job title. Okay, job title. All right, so now let's run that. So we have those two values. Now we need to have the filters. If you look at it, they want specific job titles, okay, that we need to factor in, so you can see all of this in place. So we have to copy this. Now there are a couple of ways we can do this, and we're just gonna quickly see what makes sense for us to use. Okay, so here we're gonna add our where clause, and we're gonna say job title. Okay, and job title we can say equals to, just to see. All right, so in this case I'm just gonna try with 2 first, and then we're gonna build to see a better way we can do this. Okay, let's comment all of this out. Let's say we're using our previous knowledge, and then we just say Chief Executive Officer, right? And then what will come to mind is for us to use the all condition. Now we can also say job title equals to, let's copy this, equals to this, and then we can go on and on. I'm just gonna cut this. Okay, and then let's do one more using the all functions. Okay, and then we can say all, job title, okay, equals to, and then we pull in another value from here, engineering manager. All right, okay, we drop that in, and then we run it. It should work. All right, so you can see it's working, right? But we have to go through all we use a lot of all conditions to be able to get the solution. What if we can do something better? So that's what we're going to look at now. So what if we can do something better? And then I'm going to introduce you to what I call the in operator. Okay, so let's pull this right back. Yeah, and so let's see if we can use what we call the in operator. Now You might not have used this before. Let me quickly go through what the in operator does. So what the in operator does is that it allows us to shortcut a multiple or condition. So instead of us having multiple the or conditions, you can have a list of values that then you can filter within that in operator. So what it does is that it's used to filter rows based on whether a column value matches any value in a specified list or subquery. We've not gotten to subquery yet, but let's focus on list. In this case, we're going to be using a list. So let's quickly do that. So I have the list somewhere that I'm going to pull. I'm just going to pull that, but feel free to go through that and make sure you can pull those lists, but I have it somewhere, so I'm just going to pull it to save some time. All right, so we're just going to pull the list, and this is all the list right that we have. And if you go through it, should be the same thing: chief executive officer, vice president, engineering manager, senior two, and that's the list. Okay, and then what happens is that we'll then be able to put that all of that in a bracket. Okay, so let's just drop this here. Now you can see, instead of us having to use multiple or conditions, we just use an in operator, and then we'll put in the list, and then it should work correctly. And look at that, it worked quite well. All right, now before we go further, there is something they also ask in that use case, is to have it deduplicated. Now if we go back to our lab and see what we have, we will see that we have some duplicates here. We can see 3 is design engineer, 3 is also design engineer. They don't want that, so we're going to introduce another function. We call it distinct, and let's run that. That should remove the duplicate. Now at this point, I really want to quickly talk about the difference between distinct and unique, right? The difference between distinct and unique. So distinct generally help us to remove duplicate rows from the result set. For example, this is a result set, and we did have duplicate before, and when we had a distinct, we noticed that the duplicate were removed. Okay, and also one thing to factor here is that a column can still have multiple different values, right? So but duplicate across selected columns are eliminated. What do we mean by that? You see, you can see this column is not completely unique. In other words, the values that doesn't just appear once, they appear multiple times. So in this case, you have 3, 3, 3. So that's kind of duplicate in this particular column. But when you look at it from the result set, there is no duplicate here. Okay, now what is unique then? Unique is really when you have a column in which all the values in that column only appears once. Okay, I'll give you an example. So let's say, for example, let's filter this out, and then let's also filter this out, and then you see what that looks like. Okay, you can see we have different values here. Okay, and then when I uncomment distinct, and you can see all of these values only appear once here, right? In this case, we can say this leader ID is unique at this point, even though we are using distinct. Now it's a concept I need to let you know. When we get to some of our next lessons, you will see why it's needed to really make this distinction. All right, so you can see when the set of values in a particular column is unique, meaning that it appears once, we can say that column is unique. However, when we return this, right, and then we run this again, we can say this result set is distinct. It's also, we can use the word unique, but there's a subtle difference between the two. All right, so that is really one I want to call out right now. Okay, I hope you've really learned something in this particular video, especially for those of us that are beginning to build our muscle in SQL. All right, guys, that will bring us to the end of this session. In the next session, we'll also continue to focus on some of our key concepts we need to really learn. All right, if you have comment, questions, put it in the comment chat, and I'll be more than happy to take time to look at it. Uh, At this point, I want to say thank you for listening and watching, and I will see you in the next session. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like, and thanks.